In this video we're going to look at how project management applies to civil engineering projects. So first of all, let's look at what engineering management actually is. So engineering is the part of the work which is making the project works happen, enabling them. Now that would include things like planning, figuring out what needs to be done, what resources are required, when are those resources required, how you're going to acquire those resources, what is the process you're going to go through to acquire those resources, all that sort of thing. So at the end of that planning process you should have a project plan which outlines the game plan. This is how we're going to implement the project. Organising. So these things don't, the project plan doesn't just happen by itself just because it's written down. It needs to be organised. You need to organise the resources. You need to arrange for materials to be delivered to site. You need to arrange for plant and labour to be available to you for site. You need to make sure that people are properly briefed. So that's where the communication comes in. You need to communicate what is required to the people that are actually doing the work. You need to monitor the work, make sure that it's being done properly. You need to administer it, make sure that the paperwork is done. So things like making sure that you're making claims when they're required, making sure that the timesheets are all filled in and people are getting paid, making sure that invoices are paid. So that's what the administration is. And also reporting on what the status of the project. So usually every month you have to report to your boss or to your client or both about, is it on time, is it on budget, when do we anticipate finishing it, what are the problems we're having, what are we doing about those problems. So all of that stuff there, the reporting, has to happen quite regularly for the people who aren't intimately involved but still need to keep going, maintain an understanding of what's going on. What it's not is doing the actual production work. So it's not doing the construction. The project manager doesn't hop in an excavator and start digging away. Well, he might, but he's not acting as the project manager when he does that. Same as design. While you guys are trained to do the design, and you may well be doing the design, when you're doing design work, as in doing site investigations, doing geotech, doing surveying, getting on the CAD machine and designing stuff, doing the calculations, those are all the production work. Now you may well do that. You may well end up being, the designer, but at that time when you're actually doing the doing the design work or the site investigation work or whatever, you are not being the project manager. And also if you're doing the operations. So you guys will be trained to do both. So you may well end up doing the design work but also being a project manager. So for this course you need to make the distinction between when I've got my project manager's hat on, when I'm being a project manager doing project management work, and when I'm being a technical person, when I've got my technical hat on. Now in reality, in practice, the two activities just meld together and you're doing them both together, but for this course it's useful for you to distinguish between project management, which is enabling the works to happen, the production work to happen, and doing the actual production work. They are two different things. So try to keep that that in your head, that that there is two different things happening, but normally it's happening together. So let's look at who does what for a project. You've got a client, contractor and a consultant. Hopefully you remember all this from engineering management. So the client is someone who wants something done. They want something built, or they want a result, or they want a service provider. So they select the consultant and the contractor, they pay for the design and construction work, and basically they take it over when it's finished. Then you've got the consultant. The consultants are normally people like Becker Carter, GHD, and they are specialists in doing site investigations, developing designs, and doing project management as well. They will do the site investigation, they'll do the design. They may be asked by the client to manage the project on his behalf. In other words, to hire the contractor, to manage the contractor and all that sort of business. And they'll be doing the contract administration too. So once again, acting on behalf of the client when the project is actually being constructed. And then you've got the contractor who builds the project deliverable. So their job is to get the resources together to buy the materials, to provide the labour and the plant and the materials required to build it, to coordinate everything, basically to build it as per the tender document. Now the different types of projects depend on different types of clients. So we do have different clients in civil engineering. Councils and government departments normally want us to design, build, maintain community infrastructure. So that's the roads, the water services, power supplies, all those things that make a city or a town actually work. And also civic buildings such as libraries or council buildings. So that's the first set of clients, and they're usually pretty good clients, councils and government departments. Then you've got developers who are private individuals or companies who have a bit of land or are buying a bit of land, and they want to design and develop a new subdivision or buildings which they're going to either let out, make profit from that, or they're going to sell, subdivide and sell. So once again, they are asking us to develop the roads, the water services, the power services, the telecom, all those services that are required for for that new subdivision. And then we've got companies and private organisations who have assets. So you might have someone who's a factory, and they produce toothpaste or whatever it is, and they decide that they want to expand production and they need someone to build a new warehouse or a new factory, and that's once again where we'd sort of come in and help them there. So they want to expand it. Or it could be a sports club who want a new pavilion built, or who need their fields fixed up or something like that. So there's a wide range of reasons for our projects. But when you get down to it, it's really just producing infrastructure, water, roads, buildings, all those sort of things. That's what civil engineers do. Looking at the engineering project life cycle, once again, hopefully you remember this from engineering management. DBB, remember, design, bid, build. So this is one life cycle of a story. So remember, a project has a beginning and an end, like a human, if you like. You're born, you die, and stuff happens in between. So this is the same with a project. It starts, it finishes. So it starts with a client who sort of decides that he's got an idea, he wants something done. He might have a need or an opportunity. He investigates whether it's feasible or not, whether he can do what he wants to do, decides whether to carry on or not. If he does, then it gets designed. And in a DBB project, it'll be designed, and a tender document setting out what needs to be built is produced. It is tendered, usually, goes out to construction companies, they all bid for it. The one that wins the bid gets to construct it, and at the end of the construction they commission it. In other words, they make sure everything works. Then they hand it over to the client, who then takes it from there. At that point in time, the project is complete. So it has a definite beginning, definite end, and a unique product at the end of it. So that hopefully is not news to you. You've seen it from engineering management. If not, I suggest you just study this in a little bit more detail to familiarise yourself with how it all works. Now, looking at the life cycle, the project is really a whole lot of small projects. So there's the big project, the project which is to build the building. But within it, there's a whole lot of little projects. So for the client, there's the inception project where he's figuring out whether he wants to do it or not. There is the design product where he procures design services for the design of the building. Construction, when he procures construction services for the construction of the building. So you can look at each one of those as little projects within the big project. And so what you end up with is a project looks like is composed of a whole lot of little projects, and each of those little projects has smaller projects within it. So for example, looking at the design, you've got this orange box here which represents the client's project, which is to procure a design for the building in this case, and then he hires a consultant who now has a project. The consultant has a project for which is to produce a preliminary design and then produce a detailed design. So he's got two projects there. Within that preliminary design, the consultant might have to hire a geotech investigation because they don't have those skills. So they go and hire a sub-consultant who will do the detailed geotech investigation. So the sub-consultant has a little sub project, if you like, which is to produce the geotechnical report, which is an input into the preliminary design, which allows the consultant to produce the output of his little preliminary design project, which is a preliminary design report. Then it goes on to another project where they're developing the design. So you can see it's like those Russian dolls where, you know, there's a little doll nested inside a bigger doll, inside a bigger doll, inside a bigger doll. So projects are divided into whole lot of sub-projects and smaller projects within each other. And each of the main parties has their own set of projects, and it's worthwhile sort of keeping that in mind. Now we just call them all projects. We don't go this is a sub project or something like that. We just say it's a project. But you need to keep in mind that it's probably a project within a bigger project. So the consultant, they have a project, design project. It's not the same design project as the client's project, because their project is to produce a design for the client. So they've got a little design project within the client's bigger design project, if you like. So they've got a whole lot of little sub-projects as well, as does the contractor. So he's got a project there during the tendering phase, which is to prepare a tender submission. That's the deliverable, is he produces a tender submission. If that tender submission wins, then he ends up with another project, which is to construct the project deliverables, and possibly it's the same project, he needs to commission the project deliverables as well. So it's worthwhile keeping in mind that projects, in civil engineering projects, there's normally not just one big project. There's a whole lot of little projects nested within that bigger project.